Welcome to the Marion Institute. My name is Christine Smith. I'm the program coordinator for the South Coast Food Policy Council. And with me today is Liz Wiley, our executive director for the Marion Institute. So today's quarterly meeting, we're gonna just talk briefly about what our agenda is. So we are going to share a land acknowledgement, which we start in every quarterly meeting. We will give reports from the 4 working groups, which includes initiatives that we do in the working groups and all the different policies that we work on. And then we'll just share what's coming up on the horizon, and then we'll kind of turn it back and ask you guys as well, what are you doing? So we'll start with the land acknowledgement. So I'm going to just take a few minutes just to quiet ourselves and put our hearts and minds in the place of food work in the land. Oh, oops, sorry. Okay. All right. So we do have 4 working groups. We have the Community Advisory Board, we have Food Equity Advisors. And so collectively we work together. And in our working groups, this is the first working group, Education and Communication Working Group. The specific understanding around this group is that we recognize that if we want people involved in the work in the food system, we need to educate and get everybody engaged in the work so we do this through several initiatives. The first is the Eat Local South Coast Challenge, and we had an increase of 27% this year, which is fantastic. The Eat Local South Coast Challenge is a 4-week email that you'll get once a week. You'll get an email once a week for 4 weeks, and we talk about the different sections of the food system. We share different resources within that, whether it's something specific to do, things to read, things to listen to, what to watch, movies or YouTube videos, just to educate people and to connect them to the local food in our region. So this past year, we just finished that up during the summer, and we had 530 participants. So each year we want to increase who is participating in this challenge. And the challenge is basically to eat within 200 miles of where we live. And so it's just a way to engage with that food system and educate people around that. Currently, we are gearing up for our food summit, which is on October 3. You can see on the left side of the screen from 2 to 3:30 at UMass Dartmouth's SMass. And I'm going to go, which is the UMass School of Marine and Science Technology, strengthening aquaculture through wastewater advocacy. And Liz just shared the registration for the food summit. So if you're in your area, or if you know people that are experiencing the combined sewer overflow into Buzzards Bay, which is really causing a huge problem with the aquaculture industry, or if you're in a city that has this and you're trying to figure out how do we fund the infrastructure that we need to build in those combined sewer systems that will prevent all this wastewater from going into Buzzards Bay, this is the conference for you. If you've seen an increase in beach closures, if you're seeing the aquaculture industry, people you may know having to close their farms, or you're seeing an increase in the price in shellfish, this is a potential reason to come to this event. So please share this information with other people you know, and we'll have a very robust program we're going to have Fairhaven wastewater superintendent talking about what is the issues surrounding wastewater in a municipality. We're going to have Dale Levitt, who's going to talk about, as an aquaculture fisherman, what is happening. And then we're also going to have Seth Gardner, who's going to talk about some of the impacts that we're seeing. And then we're going to have several legislators talking about a proposed bill that will actually put together a finance committee to just from all these different towns in the South Coast to start looking at how do we finance actually the infrastructure that needs to be put into the wastewater systems in our region. So we encourage you to go to register and to invite other people to this as well. So this is fantastic. And the other piece that we're working on for education is the Farm Coast documentary. So we have been going around to different farms to actually start filming. Well, what does farming look like in our area? And so we want to put together a documentary that will be released in the fall of next year. And it will cover all the different challenges, but also amazing things that are happening in the agricultural industry. So that's what we're working on in that working group. Sounds like fun, huh? All these things for you to do. So you can join the Local South Coast Challenge for next year when it pops up again, and you can come to this year's Food Summit, and then we'll let you know when the Farm Coast documentary is released. In this particular working group, we're also working on two bills. So the first is the Farm to School Grant Bill. For those of you who are not aware of the Farm to School work, that particular grant is actually for the local school systems to actually use that money to actually procure local food, to invest in infrastructure they need to build out, whether it's a commercial kitchen or extra storage space, refrigerated space. And it's also for the raised garden beds and the curriculum that will be implemented in the schools. So we support the Farm to School Grant Bill, and we testified there. We also support the Food Literacy Bill. The Food Literacy Bill is actually an amazing, really large bill that will actually require DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, to actually implement standards that's foods in the food system. So it'll be food system standards education from K to 12. So this is a fantastic bill that we're supporting as well. This will help students be more aware of what's in the food system, understand where their food is coming from. They will understand the science behind some of the food that we actually grow and eat. And they'll also get a lot of nutrition education, and they'll start to understand what are the jobs out there and how would you might want to do that. So they'll get hands-on experience with that curriculum as well. So those are the two bills that we work on in that particular group. Any thoughts or questions or reflections that you have on this particular working group and the work that we're doing here? Okay. Kate.
I don't have questions, but thank you for everyone who's doing all of this work. It's pretty incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. It is a definite effort. It's a big, we work with a big coalition, and then we're part of other coalitions too. So yeah, it takes a community to make these happen. So we appreciate that, Kate. Thank you. All right, I'll move on to the next working group. So we have a food access working group. This particular group grew out of many things, but it is all these working groups came from the research that we published in 2021, which is the Southeastern Massachusetts Food System Assessment. And there were several priorities that came out of this, and we're kind of working on these areas that here. So we host a monthly emergency food resource meeting that we had initially initiated during the pandemic. So Liz, if you could share that, you are welcome to join these meetings. These are for basically organizing and identifying challenges and brainstorming for the upcoming potential crisis that we're going to hit when SNAP is cut and when Medicaid is cut, and what's going to happen to our food system, especially emergency food systems, whether you're in a nonprofit like Catholic Charities, you run a food pantry in a church. How are we going to organize and figure all this out when those cuts happen? What are we going to do? So right now, we ask you to go ahead and register and join these, share where you're seeing the challenges, and then also we'll talk about brainstorming. Some of these meetings, we actually invite different speakers to come in. So a few months ago, we had Mira come in and share the Know Your Rights training. So food pantries, or if you're a social service agency or whatever you are, you know what to do if you encounter ICE in your community. And in November, we're going to have Pat Baker from Mass Law Reform Institute come in and talk about SNAP, the challenges that we're going to encounter when SNAP does occur. What would that look like for Massachusetts, both for the immigrant population and for the rest of the residents that are SNAP beneficiaries? What would that look like if they get cut? And what should our actions be to prepare for that? So we'll have that in November. So we encourage you to sign up and register for that. And once you're registered, you don't need to keep registering. You will just get those email reminders of the meeting. And it's always the first Wednesday of every month at 2 o'clock. There is another initiative we want you to be aware of as well. It is the South Coast Food Alert. Again, that food alert was developed during the pandemic and it's still going. So anytime you have something that's food related, whether you're a food pantry and you're looking to buy a refrigeration, you want to ask this group of like 190 different food pantries, what did you guys buy a refrigerator? What kind? Where did you go? Or if you have extra food that you want to share and somebody can come collect it, or if you have a food webinar, or if you have an opening at your work and it's food related. This is what the SFPC Food Alert is meant to do. So in order to join, just email sfpc@marioninstitute.org and I will add you to that group, that Google listserv. And once you're in it, all you do is just email, and I'll give you that email once you're in it. And you just email that, and it immediately goes to the 190 food system stakeholders that work specifically in this area. Sound good? Okay. All right. Now, this particular group also has very specific priorities that we work on in legislation. The first is the Healthy Incentives Program. This has been a humongous win for us across the state. So any of you working in HIP, we've had a huge win. So you all know that in December last year, HIP was actually cut to $20 a month. And through our collective advocacy, we actually got it up to the $40 mark in July, and now it's back to its original $40 to $80 monthly, depending on your household size. This is an incredible victory, and we don't see that going away. So we've got all that money for next year. Now our job is to actually advocate with testimony, and next year advocate to our legislators to actually make this a permanent program. So it's not been permanent since its inception in 2017. So we've been just constantly doing these ad hoc, fill in the gap funding, and we really want to make this permanent. So this is a good time right now. There's a recognition from legislators that this is a crisis point because of the SNAP cuts. And because SNAP and HIP is tied, they recognize that they really need to work on this. So there's been some really good advocacy going on and recognition from the State House and the governor that actually this is a pretty critical program for food security going forward in the state. So this is a really good time for us to push. So if you have not provided testimony, please email me at sfpc@marioninstitute.org. I'm happy to provide you the template for the HIP testimony. The template's in place. All you need to do is just put a personal story, like how it impacted you at Catholic Charities. Like, why is this so important? Or if you have stories from clients that you have, just don't use their name, and share that story if you have permission from them. And send in the testimony, and I will give you all the contact information of who to send it to. It's not too late. They're still accepting written testimony. And just to understand how powerful written testimony is, as a bill moves through committees, it goes from committee to committee, it stays in their folder. So all the actual written testimony that was done this year will be in the folder for next year with this particular bill. So anybody who's looking at the bill will be able to see all the testimony that has been submitted written. They would have to go to the archives to see the video for who orally gave testimony, but the written testimony stays with the bill. So I encourage you strongly right now at this moment to just contact me and I will send you the template for the HIP testimony. Okay, and the other thing that's just resurfaced and that we've been working on is actually the reemergence of a coalition that we've been working on for several years now. It's state-funded SNAP for Massachusetts immigrants. Representative Cabral in our area has sponsored this particular bill for several years, and we were able last year to get emergency funding for this, but because of the federal level and the understanding around DEI changed, the coalition we went quiet, but now the coalition's reemerging. There's another chance for us to get state-funded SNAP. And at this point, you can still, I will send you the information if you're interested. You can still submit written testimony and you can still ask your legislators for co-sponsorship. So these are the two key issues. And again, this will help us all by getting this passed, not only the funding for this, but actually become a permanent program because it used to be a permanent program in Massachusetts. So we want to bring this bill back and make it a permanent program. Okay, so that's the Food Access Working Group. I'm going to move on to the next one. Oops. Capacity Building Working Group. So in the Capacity Building Working Group, we've been looking at more of how do we build out the infrastructure? That's what we mean by capacity, both a soft infrastructure and a hard infrastructure. So we had looked around for a specific tool to help us do more of a mapping of what does the food system really look like in our region. So we came across a tool called the CARROT tool or the Community Agricultural Resiliency Audit tool. And that we have been working on this tool for over a year, and we have now been branching out across the southeastern Massachusetts. So we have done this with Bristol County with our own community advisory board, and now we have launched the monthly CARROT community of practice with 6 other Southeast Massachusetts county leads. And this will help us incredibly. This goes into a more of a deeper dive into the county and into your towns. So we'll have a really good sense of each county's assets and gaps. This is all going to be collected, all this information from the 6 different counties, and synthesized into our food system assessment, which will be published next fall. So this is a really important tool to actually help across our region. So we are basically working on this particular initiative. We've also initiated CARROT with Bristol, Plymouth, and Barnstable County with their own community advisory boards. So we have created little community advisory boards for each county, and they are working on the tool to answer 101 indicator questions wrapped around 7 themes. So hopefully this will help us all figure out how we can actually build the infrastructure. So if we need more food processors, where should they be? What should the distribution line look like? Where should the access points be? How many food hubs do we need? Where? So these are the questions we're hoping that both the CARROT and the food system assessment that will be published next year will answer some of these questions so we can start working as a region to figure these pieces out. Part of that is actually conducting focus groups. So we conducted 2 focus groups in Bristol County, one in Fall River and one in New Bedford, using some of those questions from the CARROT. And I'm going to share with you just some of the very high level information that we got from those 2 focus groups. So the top 2 barriers to accessing food were actually the cliff effect, which you're probably all familiar with. The cliff effect occurs, what we call it, when, for instance, your Social Security increases, that will then increase the rent on your HUD housing and decrease your SNAP simultaneously. So you're always stuck in this area of I can't afford this, but I can afford this, and you can't get beyond that poverty level. So that's the cliff effect. So they said that cost of living adjustment usually kicks in a series of events that occur. And the other barrier to accessing food is earning too little. earning too little to even if you're working full time, you're still not earning enough money to actually be thrive in your life, and you're required to go to food pantries, and it's still not enough. You have SNAP, it's still not enough. So those are the top barriers. No surprise there, but emphasizes how important SNAP is. And then the second area that we found in the focus group that's really important is when they were asked to consider growing food, over 50% said no because they lacked space, time, money, or ability. And yet many of them grew up growing food. Their grandparents had grown food. Their families had grown food. So they grew up doing it, but they now can't do it for a variety of reasons. And then when asked if they had heard of nutrition or cooking classes in their area, almost half said no. They had not heard of any nutrition or cooking classes, but said they were interested. So that was really an important thing to know, that people want to learn more about nutrition and cooking nutritional food. They want to eat healthy. So this is important. And then when we asked them, have you heard of emergency food plan in case of a disaster? So in case we had a superstorm, another pandemic, have you heard of an emergency food plan for your area? 95% said they had not. They know that there was emergency plans around fires, things like that, but they had never heard anything around food being a big part of the emergency planning. So that was a really big key indicator for us that that's an important thing to work on. And that's actually what we just provided testimony on. There's a state farm bill that actually works on implementing making food actually in the MEMA, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Plan. So we're hoping this will pass, and then at the state level, they're required to have food as part of their plan when it comes to disaster planning. So we're hoping that passes and that will be put into place. Now, the other thing that we are working on in this particular working group is a bill that's really important to all of us. Hang on, let me pull up the chat. Thank you so much. So we have Liz put into the chat our food system priorities for our legislative action. And one of them is encouraging the donation of food to persons in need. That's a really important bill, both for people who are food providers and restaurants and farmers who provide food. So this particular bill would actually give farmers and food restaurants, or the food industry, up to $25,000 in tax incentive to donate food to food pantries. And this is a key issue. Farmers need that money as well. They can't operate at a loss. So this will actually encourage farmers and food businesses to donate their food. Just recognize that about a third of food is left on the fields in a farm. There's a lot of reasons for that. They may not have enough staff to harvest everything. They may not have a market to sell to. So this will actually help the whole food system by putting more food in the food pantries and then encouraging the economic activity for farmers and food businesses like restaurants. So we are working actively on this bill, and we already testified on this particular bill as well. So I'm going to move to the last working group, is the policy working group. Our particular initiative was really wrapped around collecting stories. One of the things that we need to do, apart from educating the community on how our bills or problems impact community members, is that we are looking for testimony, stories for testimony. So we do want to hear from you. We want to hear why you think particular bills are important. Maybe you have seen clients or people you serve that are being impacted by something, and we're working on the bill. So we're actively asking for your stories. So we do have two ways that you can share your stories, whether it's from a point of view of where you work, or it's the people that you work with or work for. One is that we actually have a link that Liz, can you share that link for collecting stories? You can just add your story in there, in whatever that story is, and give us permit. There's a link in there when you go to share your story of, for instance, why HIP is important, or why the encouraging the donation of food is important. Why should your food pantry, why does it need more fresh produce from farmers? Why is that important? We're using those in testimony. And the more we can get of that real story impact, that's a huge issue for legislators. Your story will actually put a human face essentially on the bill itself. So we can provide all the statistics, but we need the stories too to back up what we're saying in the statistics. So thank you, Liz, for putting that link in there. The other thing you can do is just email me at sfpc@marioninstitute.org. I'm happy just to have a one-on-one talk with you. In collecting testimony from the public, what I'm finding is it's often better to a one-on-one meeting. It's kind of like an interview process where we put the testimony together. I send it back to you to verify it, and then we can then use that in testimony or stories. So we really encourage you, and this is making a huge impact with legislators. They want to hear from the people being impacted by the different challenges in the community and the bills that we're working on. The other thing this policy working group is working on is we just finished a summer lunch and learn issue briefing. So essentially, we basically took 1 hour a month during the summer and we just gave an issue briefing on the policy that we're actually working on. So we gave you the history of the particular bill, why it's important, what are the challenges, and what is the solution this bill provides, and the actual links to contacting legislators to take action. We had the technology set up through Action Network. So we just provided the link, and all you had to do is just put in your personal information and hit submit, and your letter goes to the legislator. So 162 people participated in those lunch and learn issue briefings, and about a little over half took action. So I think that's pretty good. We're going to continue to do this in the winter. We're going to have another series because next year our sessions are 2 years, and next year at the beginning is when all the bills will be reported out. They have to be reported out to the floor, whether that bill was favorably or unfavorably, and so then it can go to a floor vote. So at that time, we'll be doing a huge push on all these issue briefings to get people again re-educated on the policy and then taking action on the policy. The other thing we work on in this specific group is two particular policy pieces. One is equity in agriculture. Equity in agriculture is essentially, we recognize that there are barriers to Black, Indigenous, and people of color to get into farming, but we're not sure exactly what they are. So the Equity in Agriculture bill would set up a commission to actually comprised of Black, Indigenous, and people of color to actually do the research, put together a plan, and then submit that plan to submit those action items and the policy recommendations to the legislators. So that particular bill we're working on as well. And then the other big thing is the food system budget, which is more of where we're really looking at all the different foundational pieces of the food system. There's probably about 15 of them, including the bills that we work on. And we work very hard at the beginning of each session from maybe March to June on the advocacy for funding these particular programs, whether it's Mass in Motion, the Healthy Incentives Program, our local buy locals. There's a big list, but we work on that advocacy as well. I know we have a little over 20 minutes left, but we're going to go through what is coming up on the horizon. So what's coming up? So we shared with you the food summit that's coming up on October 3. We again encourage you to register and then also share that information with others. And then we're thinking of pulling together, we have the emergency food resources meeting, which we shared with you, which is the first Wednesday at 2 o'clock. And in November, we had Pat Baker from Mass Law Reform talking about SNAP from the federal level, the impacts that will happen in Massachusetts, and what we should be planning for. And then what I wanted to ask you guys we're thinking of gathering a policy putting together a policy gathering in the winter of January, February, where we're going to have both our community advisory board members and the members at large in this meeting. And I wanted to see what your thoughts are on that. And then I'll just close it out with the lunch and learn. We'll continue to have that, which I just shared. So I want to ask you again in person, what are your thoughts of having a public in-person gathering of the members at large? Like there, we have 2,200 members at large that are in our database, and encouraging them to come to a policy meeting with our community advisor board to look at their range of policies and to hear from the community what you're working on, because a lot of people are working on different food system bills, and then what you think, what is there no law about? Maybe we should be writing a bill. So we want to get input from the community. So what do you guys think of us having something like that? Nikki and Jess, what do you guys think?
Yeah, this is Nikki. Sorry, hold on. Let me jump in here. I think it sounds like a great idea. And it seems like it's timely, given the number of people that would be gathered. I think you would want to have it be fairly structured or some structure or breaking down into groups of some sort, just in terms of managing the number of people and the flow of information. But I think it is helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, that is helpful. I'm glad that you see it as value, and yeah, for sure, we would need to have it structured out.